Okay, thank.
Okay, it is
Okay.
recorded.
Um, Thank you, everybody, for attending our Turnagain Community Council September 5th, 2024 Zoom meeting. I'm Kathy Gleason. I am the president of the council this year, and I want to thank my husband, Dan, who is also a long-term member, a former president, and everything else for hosting this meeting this evening. So, we
You're
are
welcome.
order at 6:34 p.m. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is always Zoom meeting guidelines and etiquette, but I'm guessing that probably everybody that is participating this evening is familiar with Zoom and how it all works. So unless anybody has any questions, we'll just move on from that. So if I can have a motion to approve the September 5th agenda as it was sent out today. So I apologize for the lateness on that, but if I can have a motion to approve the agenda from anybody.
So moved.
Karen, thank you.
Second,
Okay, thanks, John. Does anybody have any comments, any amendments to the agenda as presented? If not, is there any objection to approving the minutes? Excuse me, agenda. Okay, I don't see anybody objection, so the agenda is passed. The agenda is approved. Okay, next is the approval of our June 6th, 2024 minutes, meeting minutes. We did not meet in July or August, so we're back to June as far as approving minutes. Thank you to Chris. I don't see Chris Habich. He's not with us, but he's probably traveling, but he's been a great secretary for us ever since he joined the board. So if I could have a motion to approve the June 6, 2024 TCC minutes, I would appreciate it.
so moved.
Okay, thank you, John. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Second,
Oh, I didn't hear who seconded it.
Dan Gleason.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dan. I heard multiple voices, so. Okay, does anybody have any thoughts, amendments on the June minutes that were also sent out earlier today? If not, is there any objections to the minutes? And we always put a caveat on there if the board in retrospect sees anything that might need amending as far as minor things, then we have the ability to do that. But otherwise, we'll, is there any objection? Okay, no objection. So the minutes from June are approved. Okay, next we have announcements. I've got 3 of them, and then I'll see if anybody else has any announcements. The Anchorage Waterways Council has a watershed perception survey out now online. And the responses to the survey will provide a good picture of the local community's thoughts, concerns, and suggestions for the council to consider. The results will be compared to 3 previous surveys from 2010, 2015, and 2020 to get a good picture of the condition of our local waterways from those who are most familiar with them. So if anybody is interested in going online, then, and I believe this information was sent out as part of the meeting notice. But if anybody needs to have the link put in, maybe one of our board members could put that in for us if you know how to find that. If not, I can try and type it in later on. And so I know that they need to have about 400 responses, and they don't have very many so far, to make it a legitimate survey. So if anybody is familiar with a creek, lives near a creek, recreates near a creek, they'd love to hear from you. The second announcement is Alaska DOT is creating a new program called Partners in Safety to seek knowledge and experiences from local road users. So their goal is to develop new ways to identify and mitigate safety concerns about the transportation system. So you can go to dot.alaska.gov/be safe to take that survey. And then they have a listening session at the LUSAC Library on Wednesday, September 18th, but they didn't provide a time. So that's probably on their website. So if anybody's interested in that, then feel free to go online. And then lastly, got a notice that Alaska or Anchorage People Mover, they had done a survey about the different routes, and they have made the difficult decision to implement option B, which means that Route 25 will soon operate with a 30-minute frequency throughout the day. I believe that would be instead of a 15-minute. And then they have a few other changes as well. So they'll get the final schedules posted on September 27th, and they'll start on October 28th. So if any of you use the People Mover, you might want to go to their website and get some more information and track that. So those are the announcements that I had. Does anybody else have any announcements they'd like to share? I don't see any hands raised. Oh,
Kathy, this is Kathleen. Do you want me to just briefly update people on the recreational trails plan now or at some other point?
no, that's under board report.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
That sounds great. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Anybody else have any announcements? Okay, then we'll move on to what's new in Turn Again, which is just giving us 5 minutes during a meeting. If anybody wants to share anything about what may be going on in Turn Again and in your particular area of Turn Again that you just want to share, the good, bad, or the ugly. I guess I will share that I was shocked to see the butchering and clearing of some landscaped islands on West Northern Lights. And so when I found out about that, I contacted the ombudsman office, and they sent out an email. They had no idea who would have been responsible for that, why they did it. They did damage or destroy 5 trees that Dan and I happened to donate in one of the islands where trees previously had died as part of the original landscaping. When we celebrated our 35th anniversary, we donated 35 plus trees to parks and road areas in Turnagain. And so we were not happy with what we saw. I have not been reached out by anybody that except for somebody about 3 weeks ago. So I'm still kind of waiting to see what they may be wanting to do. I wanted to know who's responsible and how we work together to remediate. So stay in touch. So that's what's going on in Turnagain. I don't know if any of you others noticed it, but we weren't happy with
Okay.
all of that. So
Another issue on that bridge or the railroad overpass on Northern Lights, the graffiti. Has anybody reported that to graffiti busters or Cameron? Have you looked at it, and could you get somebody to get that chair mafia sign off the overpass?
Cameron, are you familiar with what
I'm not,
Dan is?
I'm not, I'm taking notes as you're talking. Tell me where it is.
It's on the east side of the overpass, the railroad overpass on Northern Lights.
Okay.
As you come west, you'll see the Chair Mafia. Somebody did a really nice graphic, but it's really not really good for there.
It's
On
not
East Northern
appropriate.
Lights.
Yeah.
It's not appropriate.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll
if
chime in driving west. You can't miss it. I did see on the social media that there's a similar one on the south side, like off of Diamond. So it must have been a coordinated effort.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably been about a week or more ago. I just kind of took a second to go on the Muni website and I Googled graffiti busters, which used to be a Muni program where you could call in and they would go, great, we'll take care of it. But I did not, that Muni website now is not easy for me to navigate once it got changed under the previous administration. I don't know if that was disbanded. It didn't have any funding anymore. So you might look kind of broaden that and see if there is actually still a graffiti buster hotline where people can call in to report the kinds of things that Leslie and Dan just described.
Yeah. Let's see.
I think it's on the railroad's trestle.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. If you're, if you're going west on Northern Lights, you can't miss it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I actually was curious what Chair Mafia meant, and I started Googling that, and it's some reference to conspiracy theories. It pops up around conspiracy theories. I can't explain any more than that.
We probably don't want to know any more than that, actually.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Anchorage Works site. I hope you are, but it's the muni.org Anchorage Works. It's where you report homeless camps and street maintenance problems and all of those things. I'm looking on there now, and there's not one on for graffiti. So I'll make that recommendation that there's something there so people can report it.
That would be great, Cameron. Like I said, it used to be just one of those things you would just click on. It was a program where you report it and it gets taken care of, and it would get taken care of quickly
Yeah.
by Muni staff or some contractor or whoever, the Muni worked with. But yeah.
And I'll put this in the chat. If you haven't seen this before, this is where they've put a lot of sort of places all where you report things in one place. And I just put the link in the chat. So I'll ask them to see if they can put a link on there for that.
Excellent. Thank you, Cameron.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else have anything to what's new in Turnagain? Okay. If not, we will move on to the executive board report.
Sorry,
And-
I had one more. This is
Tony?
Tony. Yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
I've lived here in the Turnagain area for about 7 years now. And just throughout the time, we have noticed increased just general just bad activity at one particular address here in the Wagner Estates area. We've worked with the health code department, we've worked with APD, we've worked with property management companies and neighbors. And this year has been the kicker when we've had at least 7 and or more call-ins to APD with just blatant firearm usage in the community.
Oh.
What is the address?
It's 3835 Carlton Avenue. And I started doing some digging last year because it just got to a point where just we've got elderly walking through the neighborhood, and it's just gotten bad. And I did my research. I looked up DNR records. I've sent letters to the owner, just to try and get their attention. And it got to the point where I think it might be family owned or something. But I am seeing the group that is residing in this building starting to spread and or to other areas in the neighborhood, which is causing much more just riffraff to happen this year. And the last one was just a couple of weeks ago where my children were out in the yard playing, and a gentleman and a couple of others had a handgun, and they accidentally went off, and I had to call APD, and there was a full response, and they were not able to apprehend any of the suspects, and I believe it just ended up in being a ticket or accidental discharge within the municipality, right? But I pulled records, and this particular property has had just so many call outs for just some just randomly just heinous things. And it's just gotten to a point where when we're right on the edge of the school zone for Turnigan, we're 1 block away from Turnigan Elementary, right? And it's gotten to the
Mhm.
point where I can't even have my kids play in the front or the back, due to the foot traffic in and out of this place all day, every day, all night, every night.
That is very serious.
Is there anyone on from APD? Do we have anybody on?
No, we typically don't have anybody on from APD. On rare occasions, they ask to participate. And of course, in-person meetings pre-COVID, they would sometimes just show up and participate and have anybody ask questions of them.
That
But
copy, wait, Anna is in the waiting room. She reports to
oh,
me.
Dan,
Oh,
your
yeah.
host, can you let
Sorry.
Anna in, please?
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, I have a, I can follow up with that as well and just ask more questions about that location and to see if I can learn anything.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it just got to the point where I own a home here, and I've got a fourplex in the location, and I've got an elderly a lady who's just retired, and she's just eyes on this place all day, every day, to the point where I had to put up cameras on our property just to be able to keep my tenants and our personal stuff safe, because stuff has been stolen. People are loitering, people are jiggling door handles, and they're all coming in and out of this one property. Oh,
Okay.
3831 Carlton, huh?
3835 Carlton, I believe.
3835. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, Tony. I appreciate you sharing that with us. That's pretty disturbing to hear.
No, thank you. I'm glad that this is a vector where I can at least express it. So
Okay, well, we'll move on to our executive board report. We don't ever have a set date for our board meeting. It kind of depends on availability of our 6 members. So if anybody wants to know when we meet, when we plan to meet, just don't hesitate to contact me. And once we have a date, anybody is welcome to participate in them. You'll probably be kind of bored. Yes, pun intended, but it's just out there for you to consider. So the board discussed this, and we are not going to take any time at all to discuss this at our meeting this evening. As you can see, we have a packed agenda. But the board again has discussed internally, should we continue meeting via Zoom? Or should we look into trying to find some place to meet in person? And the choices are very far and few between, unfortunately. So the board is just asking you to think about it, and we'll put it on our October agenda for more discussion to see, who has what preference. When we did a little bit of a poll at our meeting last spring, it was about 50-50 of preference on Zoom and meeting in person, which doesn't help our board any to make a decision. So anyway, just FYI, and we'll discuss it at our October 3rd meeting. So Kathleen McCoy is our treasurer, and she can now give the treasurer's report. Kathleen? And you need to unmute.
How's that?
That sounds great.
Okay, great. So I'm new at this, and Kathy, when we had our preliminary meeting getting ready for the board and you gave me the amounts, I wrote them down so I could give a treasurer's report, and I've recycled that piece of paper. So I'm sorry I cannot actually give it, but I remember it was 2 amounts, and one was about 1,000 and something, and the other was less than that. And I apologize.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
Okay, well then I'll
Again.
provide that, and then you can jump in to talk about other stuff treasure related. So as of July 31st, 2024, our accounts at North Rim Bank, our savings account is good, $1,617.84. Our checking account, $195.05. We are a council that rarely does anything with money. Sorry, did you say something? No. So we're not a council who has a large bank account. And so anybody can feel free to give us money, but
Yeah.
we're not a 501c3, so you wouldn't even be able to deduct it on your taxes. But anyway, those are the amounts as of July 31st. We give these quarterly, so that's provided. So now if you want to talk, Kathleen, if you want to, discuss about the training session last evening and our EIN number and the status and all of that, feel free.
Right. So I attended an online training for people who are treasurers in the community council arena. And they're essentially just trying to freshen up the process here. Some groups don't have bank accounts, some have bank accounts and they created their own EIN number, which is a number you get from the IRS. Some groups have been using the Federation of Community Councils EIN number, and they're telling councils to, get acquainted with their bank accounts again if they have them. If they would like to close them, the Federation of Community Councils will hold your money for you. There's no fee for that. You could easily do that. They have a 501c3. So if someone donated something to a council and wanted a receipt for that for their taxes, they could use the FCC's EIN. They also would manage donations and one other thing, grants. And if a community council gets a grant or gets a big donation, they're happy to handle those. There is a 6%, management fee that they would charge for that, but no charge for managing the council's, bank accounts. And Kathy, I wasn't sure whether, since I'm new to this, whether we have our own EIN or whether we're using the FCC EIN.
Yeah, and that was one of the key things that kind of started this whole thing, was once the new executive director was hired, she realized that the accounting parts of FCC was a little bit blurry with regard to their EIN number, because some councils, as Kathleen said, did use the FCC EIN number. TCC does not. I double checked on that, so we're good. But any council that is currently using the FCC's EIN number for a bank account, they do have to get out of that. And as Kathleen said, then there's other options if they want to get their own or have FCC manage their money or etc. But we're good. So like I said, we're not a 501c3. Our accounts are actually called business accounts with North Rim, and we can retain the status quo at this point as far as our money in our account. Okay, so so we're good on our treasury stuff, and we will move on to under still executive board report, FCC delegate report. And we did have a big meeting on the 21st. I'm going to be really fast and just go through things, and then if any of you want more information on anything that I bring up, then I'd be happy to expand on it. But FCC created a new logo. They have formed 4 FCC delegate committees: outreach, training, governance, and communication. On September 17th, they're holding a strategic planning meeting for FCC delegates to discuss more what delegate, and we are officially board members of the FCC as delegates, and what our responsibilities are and what roles we play as delegates and board members. The website is being redesigned, and they hope to kick off a new website design January of 2025, next year. They're hosting a series of town hall meetings to allow the community to get more familiar with what councils are. And very quickly, the first one is on Monday, September 23rd, 7 to 8 p.m. And it is on demystifying community councils, understanding their role in fostering civic engagement. And then the next one is October 21st. It's navigating community council meetings, mastering meeting format, Robert's rules, and articulating your opinions. And November 18th, guiding community council meetings, leading diverse stakeholders with vision. I'm not even sure what that last one is, so I'll probably definitely attend that one. But so if you want more information, you can go to the FCC website or let me know and I can share that with you. We did pass a resolution at our meeting that just formalized how FCC handles emails to community councils, not the ones that community councils ask them to send out, but when they get requests from non-council outside parties, which they get a lot of requests and say, hey, can you share this with community councils? And they feel like that kind of has gotten out of hand a little bit. So we passed a formal resolution how that can better be managed internally by staff. Barb Jones attended from the mayor's office and, kind of covered the first months of Mayor LaFrance's tenure. And their priorities are good governance, safe streets and trails, and building our future. And then we did have Tom Davis from the planning department to talk about and provide an update on the 10-year community council boundary review. But that's a separate board item that Kathleen's going to jump on as soon as I'm done with my report on FCC as a delegate and I'm finished. So does anybody have any questions about any of that? It was a busy meeting and the new staffing that's been hired has really been active and coming up with some new ideas and ways to make everything better with community councils and at the federation level. So Kathleen, do you want to go ahead and or excuse me, not Kathleen, I apologize. Karen also attended via Zoom our delegate meeting as our alternate. And so she heard the presentation on the 10-year community council boundary review. So Karen, if you want to give a briefing on that, that would be great.
Yeah, the update at the FCC meeting wasn't very in-depth. He mostly just talked about the 2-page update document, or excuse me, 1-pager is what I'm seeing here, about the project, but it had a good link to the project webpage where you can find both maps and a white paper that discusses what the boundary committee talked about. There were 3 areas that impact Jernigan. The first one under item 30 noted that the North Star Community Council District is very small and that it should be joined to Midtown or Spenard, but it appears that somehow that devolved into a discussion about moving or potentially combining Jernigan and Spenard community councils. And the Boundary Review Committee was unanimous in voting against that and retaining the current boundaries. The second issue was one questionnaire responded with interest in moving the area from Ship Creek to Wisconsin Street into Spenard Community Council. The Boundary Committee also did not recommend that movement. And then one that I think will have some change involved is the discussion about Spenard Beach Park, where a couple of different proposals were put in front of the committee, and it doesn't appear that the committee landed on a specific recommendation. Those include no change, which would leave it in Jernigan Community Council, divided between Jernigan Community Council and Spenard Community Council by moving the eastern half of it to the Spenard Community Council, or just move it to Spenard Community Council and remove it from Jernigan, or include it in both of us, about both community councils in its entirety, and have it as a shared arc. So I suppose that if this body had an opinion about Bernard Beach Park either being a shared asset, a split asset, all Bernards, all Turnigans, we could entertain a motion and a vote now, or
Well, actually, that, if I could interject, Karen. So what Tom said, requested of all the community councils was to bring this up, give us a, provide an update that the advisory committee has gone through all of the input when they were taking comments from both individuals and community councils, to just say they've done that. And as Karen described, and then they kind of went through all the proposals and either said, we don't like that idea, we may like that idea, we might like, etc. And so Tom just wanted every council to be aware of that's where we're at in the process. And then in October, November is when they have their things finalized. By the end of September, they'll present that to all the community councils, and they're asking councils either in October or November to take a formal position, pass a resolution if we have any opinions, input on any of the process and proposals at that point in time. And then it'll go before the Planning and Zoning Commission for review and approval for any boundary changes in December. And then it'll go before the Assembly for final consideration of proposals sometime in the first quarter of 2025. So that's the process we're going through. We did pass, when they were asking initial input and comments, we did pass, I'm not sure if it was a resolution, a letter, or just a motion, but we did formally request that Spenard Beach Park be shared with overlapping boundaries with Turnagain and Spenard, not split it in half, but actually have a unique situation where our boundaries would overlap in just with that park. So that's kind of where we're at in the process. So this will be on our agenda again, either in October or November, where we'll take more formal action. So, so this is just an FYI update at this point in the process. So does anybody have any questions for Karen or myself on that? If not, then we'll move on to the next executive board report item, the last one, and that's recreational trails plan update. And Kathleen is our quasi TCC rep, unofficial TCC rep. So Kathleen, if you want to just give a briefing, I know there's not much to report, but.
Right. There's not a whole lot. They've only met once in June. There's a citizen advisory group, and then there's a technical advisory group. They've both met, and it was kind of an icebreaker. And the biggest thing they did is talk about our trails and what they need. The reason they're updating the plan is it's 30 years old, and it's Chugiak, Eagle River, and Anchorage, and the demographics have changed, and use of the trails has changed, etc. So that's why they're doing it, and it's in coordination with AMATS. And I will put they have a nice website where they're putting lots of information. There's not a lot yet, but they had good notes on their meeting with the citizen advisory group, where you got to hear or read people's concerns and ambitions for the park or trails. And also the same thing is available from the technical work group. And so I think you'll find it interesting. I'm not a member of the citizen advisory group, but when I reached out to the Parks and Rec, they said we've filled our group, but you can just kind of monitor and report back to your community council. So I'll keep on doing that. Then their next meeting, they didn't meet over the summer. They're planning some kind of a workshop in October. And I think if you read the issues that the citizens raised, you will recognize them. It's everything from lack of signage, poor drainage, parking, the need for bathrooms, lack of connections, bad pavement in summer, lack of trash cans, a request for more trash and upkeep, more management, some crime and safety issues around homelessness, rogue trail construction, people just making their own trails, and some issues of perceived safety on the trails, questions of social etiquette. When you have lots of people using the trails, are they using good etiquette, sharing the trails, user conflict, that sort of thing. You all may have received a survey that they put out, that this committee put out as part of their update, which was really asking you a lot of questions about what you would like to see on the trail. And I did the survey, and I believe that the Federation of Community Councils sent it out broadly. So if you haven't seen it, let me know. I'll see if I can get it through FCC again. But anyway, that's kind of the update. There's not a whole lot to say yet, except there's a lot of interest and a real serious approach to this. So anybody have any questions for me?
Hey, any questions for Kathleen? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so thank you very much, Kathleen. And just, keep us updated. Okay, so we'll go on to reports to provide brief updates. So we have both of our assembly representatives here. So Cameron and Anna, either or both of you, would you like to provide an assembly report for us?
Yeah, I think I'm going to get us started. Kathy, will you remind me how much time you want us to use?
Well, let's see, where are we at on our timeline? We're a little bit behind, so probably no more than a few minutes.
Okay, great. Well, then I'll just do a few highlights. Some of you have been following the Eklutna River restoration conversation that has been going on. We had a really interesting meeting today with the native village of Eklutna. So as you know, that the utilities proposed that of a $57 million plan, and the assembly and the native village of Eklutna are asking the governor to pause on that for 2 years to explore alternative ways of approaching that, and also pushing for a full restoration of that river. And so that is happening right now. Today, there was signed a joint resolution between the native village of Eklutna and the city of Anchorage to really ask the governor for that pause and to explore some alternative ways of ensuring that we maintain our power, but also looking at fully restoration of that river. So there will be a meeting among the owners coming up soon. We'll be involved in that, and so I'll report back when we know more. But that is sort of an active conversation that is going on now. On the homelessness front, with the new administration coming in, we have a new coordinator. Her name is Farina Brown. I've had the opportunity to meet with her, both Anna and I, and she's great. I think that she's really going to provide a new kind of leadership and coordination that we've been lacking for a while. Some of the things to be looking for coming forward is a new cold weather shelter plan, and a plan that really begins to address year-round shelter. There's a lot going on in our city, and a lot of concern, as most of you know, around camps, around abatement, around crime related to homeless camps, and a lot of concern around that. So I've been engaged in a lot of those conversations. All of us have. Along with all of those challenges, though, there have been some really positive things that are going on. In the last 8 months, through the new Sept program, 177 people have been housed. The effort to really keep people in place and house them is beginning to work. And so the key right now is preparing for winter and making sure we have a place for folks to go. But at the same time, really beginning to have a more comprehensive plan related to homeless in general. And it hasn't been there for the last few years, but I feel like there's the right people in place now to begin to develop that. On the early childhood front, as you know, we passed a law using all of the tax from marijuana sales that will go directly to childcare and early child education. Anna and I have both been working hard on that and developing all of the work to report out and establishing the accountability board. That board will be the board when the taxes are collected, they will make the recommendations on how those funds are spent. So a final report from that initial work is finally finished, and a recommended budget for this first year is done. You can see that on a website called Childcare in Anchorage that has all the information from the research that was done, the work of the community group that was made up of providers and community leaders and early childhood experts. They worked for, we all worked for about a year to develop that. And so moving forward, there'll be a recommendation from the mayor on who will serve on that accountability board and what that first year budget will look like. So that's really exciting. It's a lot of work that has been done in that. Finally, on the public safety front, obviously there's been a lot of concern about the recent officer-involved shootings. There has been, more than normal of those, and the most recent one was a 16-year-old girl. So we've been having a number of meetings on that. The mayor has come out and asked for an independent evaluation of that incident, and so that RFP has been put out, so we'll know soon who will come and do that report. APD has launched an internal investigation in terms of just looking at their own policies and their own practices and looking at there's things that they need to change and learn to do differently in terms of their training, their engagement. The mayor has also called for an external evaluation of policies overall at APD. And from what I understand, this is a pretty normal practice that most police departments every 3 to 5 years can have an independent person coming in to give them a really new look to make sure that they're doing what they need to be done and really on par. So that's coming soon as well. And then 2 more things on public safety. Anna and I are both working on the potential reboot of the Public Health and the Public Safety Commission. This was a commission that was residents of Anchorage who served on a commission, and the purpose of it is really to make sure that there's a strong relationship between the public and the police department and other public safety services in Anchorage. And we're looking at making sure that when we reboot this, that it really is a meaningful and effective group that can help to provide some level of oversight for the police, but also can strengthen the relationship between the police department and the community. So that work is happening now. And then last thing on my list is budget season is coming, and Anna is one of the chairs of our budget committee. And I just want to hand it to her to see if she has anything to say about budget or anything else before we close.
Wow, Cameron, thank you. You covered a lot in a very succinct but informal way. Informative way. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, hey, Anna, welcome and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I realized it's been 3 months since you guys last met, and there's just always things going on. So I was trying to think about what happened over the summer. So I'll cover just a couple additional things. And thanks, Cameron, for covering most of the stuff I could think of for sure. One of them, one on budget, just to mention, one positive outcome out of the state legislative session and what the governor chose to veto or not was the municipality got $4 million in shelter funding to continue operation of the shelter in Midtown at 56th Avenue, the old solid waste services administrative building. And I'll just be clear, it's not where the garbage was being dumped, it's an office building. So that's still being used as a shelter. And then that allows us to continue operating that year round. So we still need to shore up and make sure that we're funding it for the winter months. But that was a great investment by the state and a recognition. I think that homelessness is a statewide issue for a lot of reasons, and then Anchorage gets the brunt of it, of course. So that's a win for sure. And it took a lot of hard work. So glad to see that. On the budget, yeah, we're just kicking off the budget season. So the mayor is required to prepare what's called the 120-day memo. It's really a preliminary kind of high level. What are the priorities? Do we see any major changes in revenue one way or the other? That really a big picture look. And then the real budget, the draft budget is published at the end, basically the end of this month, 1st of October. So we're starting to get into that process. Of course, the departments have been busy, putting their budgets together and rolling it all up. And the new administration has been hard at work making those deadlines happen. So anyway, so that will be moving forward. We'll give another briefing as that moves forward. But one thing just to note is I know you guys all fill out the capital improvement program lists of projects. And so one thing to be paying attention to is the CIP, the 6-year list of projects. Make sure that all, West Anchorage and all of our priorities are still in there. And then of course the CIB, the 1-year version of it, this capital improvement budget, is basically what drives what we ask for in state legislative requests, in federal requests, and of course what ends up going on the bonds. So that'll be coming up as well. So we'll be circling back again just to make sure that, of course, there's way more need than we have ability to pay for sure, but just making sure that we're getting our priorities in. So more on that later, but just to mention, that'll be the next step after the CIP lists are produced by councils. There's also been discussion about changing the process and the timeline, hopefully improving the website interface. That was one part of the discussion. I know it's always a challenge, but also thinking about the timing. Should we ask councils to do this not right at the end of the spring season, but can we move it up? Can we ask, in the fall with the idea that it's for next year's budget, right? So kind of thinking about intentional process, thinking about how we can make opportunities for the public other than councils to also weigh in, because basically everything flows through community councils. There is no public input the way that there is with our transportation plans, where everybody can submit comments. So those are just examples of things that we've identified as ways to improve that process. And so more on that to come, and it'll probably get rolled out next year at this point, because we're we got plenty going on. And then so that's kind of the big things on the budget. And then I'll just mention a couple other things. I can't let a meeting go by without talking about housing. So there's been continues to be a lot of work on that. Obviously, there's everything from looking at tax incentives to looking at zoning changes to looking at how we improve our process, looking at affordable housing specifically, right? There's a lot of different pieces. We passed our housing action plan last year. I'm hoping to look at that again and do an update of that and really pick some priorities for the coming year. But one that I've been focused on is basically how do we make it easier to reuse existing buildings, with the idea that new construction is expensive. We don't see a whole bunch of developers lining up to build in our town right now. So, and we have a lot of aging housing stock. So how could we make it easier for a household to, to build a unit on their house? Or how do we make it easier to fix up some of these older properties, right? So I'm starting to chase those down. There's not one answer to it. But one thing that I've discovered is actually there's a lot of folks trying to build ADUs in our town, which is great. Some of them probably for income, a lot of them for family members, assisted living, or you got the old mother-in-law unit is the what they used to be called. And I should have said those are accessory dwelling units. So anyway, so really looking at that, but what we've discovered is that a bunch of them got stuck in the permitting process. And basically there's been delays dealing with things. When you start to do an improvement on your property, it triggers all these other things. Even if you aren't, working on the front of your house, you might just be working on the back, but then you have to bring everything up to code. So anyway, there's all these kind of issues. And the upshot is that a lot of permits that were supposed to be done this summer are not going to be done, and they got pushed into the fall, which means you can't put a foundation in if you're building an addition, which means they're pushing them all of them to next year. So I mentioned that not because I'm going to be the one to just solve that, because it's really an issue of our permitting process, but it's just an example of how we seem to keep getting in our own way, even as we say we need more housing, we want more housing, we want people to build things, but there's so many just pieces that are really working against that. So anyway, so a lot of the work is going to be untangling and trying to remove those barriers where we can. So that was also a lot to share, so I'll stop there.
Okay, well,
Anna?
thank you very much. I see Sarah Haley has
Anna?
a question. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Can you hang on, Sarah? Dan, did you have something? Did you?
No, I was just making sure Sarah's hand got noticed.
Yeah. So Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Anna. I was wondering if you could really quickly explain the CIB process. Are you guys picking that off of our CIP list, or will the councils pick what goes on the CIB? And then I also had a question for you and Cameron about Project Anchorage and whether or not you were one of the 3 assembly members who were supporting it. I saw it presented at the AEDC luncheon and it said 3 assembly members were on board, and just curious what your thoughts are. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
I
I'll
can brief.
jump in. Sorry, Anna. And we do have a presentation on Project Anchorage down under old and new business as well. So
Okay. Yeah, I'll be brief. So the first one, so the CIP is really, it's called the 6-year capital improvement program. And the idea is that we should be planning ahead, right? Maybe year 1, you have to do design, and then year 4, you're trying to get construction money. You know, it recognizes that these things take time. So that's the 6-year version. And then the 1-year version is really just whatever's in year 1 of that project. So they get decided together. And so, yeah, it's certainly something where ultimately the assembly votes on it, but it's all fed in from that same CIP process. So they're not 2 different lists, or they're really just 2 different functions of that list. And then in terms of Project Anchorage, yeah, neither Cameron nor I are sponsors on that. And then I'll leave any details to the presentation because, again, I'm not a sponsor. But the 3 sponsors are Randy Solt, South Anchorage, Felix Rivera, Midtown Anchorage, and Scott Myers, Eagle River.
Okay.
And then really the project is being led by the Business Coalition. So I imagine you guys will be hearing from one of those folks too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
okay, thanks. And Karen, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand up before, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, thank you. Anna, could you give me any direction on what would be an effective way of seeing if the homeless coalition or whoever works on that would what they're doing to enforce the no homeless camps within a half mile of the shelter, because there's a lot there's very extensive camps within that area, and they've been reported multiple times on the Anchorage work site, and they don't seem to be getting mitigated at all, and they've removed a bunch of trees and have really made that section of the Campbell Creek Trail feeling pretty unsafe for a lot of people who used to use it. So I wondered if maybe the new homeless coordinators contact, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, Karen, this is Cameron. I would love for you to, I want to make sure that I know exactly which camp you're talking. I think I know which one you're talking about, but would be happy to talk with you offline about that and to connect you with Farina as well. If you want, what I can do is put my email in the chat, and would love for maybe you and I can chat offline, and I can make sure I know exactly the place you're talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you both for your presentations.
yes. Yes. Thank you so much. It's great to have both of you attend. Love it. So Tony, if you are monitoring the chat room, Cameron put in a notice about a meeting, a community conversation about public safety for Tuesday, September 10th. That might be something that you or your neighbors would like to participate and attend, since you described quite a bit going on right in your, the Carlton Square type area. So just wanted to make sure you were aware of that chat that Cameron provided if you're not monitoring it. So again, thanks to both of you guys for your assembly report. Very informative. Okay, so the next thing under board report or reports, do we have a representative from the mayor's office? We typically don't, but with this new administration, we didn't know if anybody might be starting to attend council meetings, but I don't see anybody raising their hand. So school board report, I know that Dora Wilson is the person representing West Anchorage as far as council meeting attendance and for the 2024-2025 school year, but I don't see that she's with us this evening. So we'll move on to airport report. And let's see, Ruth, where are you? Are you here, Ruth? Or Rosemary? Let's see.
No, it's Ruth. Yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah.
yep, you're right on
Okay.
the money.
There you go. Thank you for joining us. Ruth
Yes.
is here to present the airport report for us this evening.
Yes, thanks for having me. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Ruth Kimmer. I work directly with Eric Peterson, who is kind of transitioning between two jobs and who is the normal attendee and representative of the airport at these meetings. So thanks for allowing a little change up in the schedule there with having me present for the airport. So we have a few things that I was going to touch on. And again, because as I was listening to the meeting, I'm realizing you haven't met throughout the summer, so I'll kind of touch on some things that were in the airport report, this, our update report that we publish, that happened over the summer as well. So to touch on.
Ruth, I apologize.
Sorry, go ahead,
I'm going to
please.
be really rude and interrupt you. I realize that I did not get the legislative report snuck in there in the reports.
Yeah.
And we have Senator Matt Clayman joining us here. So I'm so sorry, Ruth.
No, quite
if that's
okay.
okay with you, can we let Matt jump in right now?
Please.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Hi, Matt. Welcome.
Hi, Kathy. How are you today?
Well, I could be doing better, clearly. Not, it is what it is.
All right. Well, thank you for calling, and I would let you know I was running a little late tonight, but good to be here. And I guess it's September, school's back and summer's over, so you all are back in meeting, and hope you all enjoyed the 3 months off. We sent a report to the Community Council with an update on some of the various legislation that made it through, including some legislation that we were involved in sponsoring in our office for West Anchorage. I would say kind of one of the big pieces of legislation that did go through was the consolidated crime bill that had a number of pieces. One area that was, I think, really important and our office had been working on was the provisions that were started in Senate Bill 53, which was addressing the situation that occurred at the Lusac Library a couple of years ago when a person stabbed one of our West Anchorage constituents. And we wanted to make some changes so that folks that had significant mental health issues, that people that were victims of assaults that occurred in those circumstances, they would be able to follow what happened in the civil proceedings and had a right to attend those proceedings and close a gap that had existed in our statutes to make sure that when somebody does commit conduct that, absent their mental health challenges, would be a crime, that there was not a gap where those folks fall out of the system, but we actually continue to follow them. And there's a evaluation about whether they have the kind of mental health disease that really makes them a danger to themselves or others. So that was a big part of the crime bill. There was a number of other provisions that we talked about. A couple of pieces of legislation that I've been working on for actually 9 years. There was the 12-month birth control bill that passed both houses with very large margins. And so we're very disappointed yesterday when the governor vetoed that legislation. So that work, I think, will continue as we go forward. And then we also had a legislation that our office worked on to really adjust things. And it was a successful compromise with Turo and the ride share, or the person-to-person platforms for car rentals. And there was a successful compromise with the traditional rental companies, Enterprise, Avis, and the others, that was really supported by everyone, including the Department of Revenue at the committee hearings. But then yesterday, the governor vetoed that legislation as well. So that work will continue going forward. But mostly here, I think that you've got the updates when session was over, and largely, I think, a fairly successful budget year for the legislature, and mostly here to answer any questions you all may have.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Anybody have any questions for Matt at this point in time? So are you in session yet? Or that's not till January? Is that correct?
Not in, I don't think there's going to be a special session called. No indication. So we're not in session until January. And there is an election on November 5th. And I know this is a group of folks that I think everyone here always votes with. Encourage your friends and neighbors to vote too, because it's one of the best ways we participate in our democratic process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody have any questions for Matt? There's a lot of work that was done this last session. Really appreciate it. Always appreciate you keeping us updated on what you're working on and what's going on down in Juneau when you're in session. So enjoy your time in Anchorage, and hopefully we'll see you again next month in October.
Yeah. Planning to be here, I will tell you that it's good to be in Juneau, but it's great to be home.
Okay, well, great. Thank you again, Matt. And thank you again, Ruth, for your patience on jumping in and providing the airport report. So now you again have the floor.
Karen, hey,
Thank you.
Kathy,
Yes, Dan.
Karen had her hand up.
Oh, I apologize, Karen. I didn't see it.
No, I was showing Matt appreciation for his presentation,
Oh,
catching
you
us
were
up.
clapping.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you, Dan.
Okay, I'll try and be brief. I think probably most of you kind of keep track of the airport updates that are published. So just to kind of recap on what has happened over the summer, obviously we're in the midst of many airfield construction projects. One of the brighter spots is our taxiway Zulu. Taxiway construction project is ahead of schedule and looks like it'll be done by the end of this summer. And our construction manager would tell me never to say that out loud because that will jinx it, but that's what we're hoping. Additionally, we had the parking garage, as you know, has been an ongoing project, and we recently finished the 4th floor of the parking garage and reinforcing that, and now the entire parking garage is open, so we're hoping at least through the winter we'll have a little more availability on parking. We just recently had our triannual exercise. This is an FAA mandated safety and security exercise that the airport must execute every 3 years, hence the word triannual, right? And it went off without a hitch. It was widely regarded through all the state agencies involved to be a huge success. We had a large volunteer turnout, and the entire event was done and executed really well, and was an excellent training exercise, like I said, for many of our state agencies. Pardon me. Just to kind of touch on some things that are happening within the terminal and our passenger service. The most current thing that hasn't been published yet, but will be in the next, I'm sure, airport update is we are replacing our children's play area. So the plane, I don't know if many of you have been in the terminal lately, but probably so, I would guess. The children's play area, which is located at our gate C9, that is getting a complete refresh, and it's going to be a really nice, modern, clean area for our littles to play in. So we're really, everyone I think at the airport is very excited about that. That replacement will be happening next week. So starting over the weekend through next week, 9/6 through 13 is what we've been told. Also, of course, our summer seasonal service is ending. By the end of this month, we'll have concluded most of our seasonal service, like Air Canada, Sun Country, our international flights with Discover and Condor Airlines, and some of the big legacy airlines some of their flights will start to taper back a little bit too. Additionally, 2 other additional things within the terminal. Our hardworking folks in leasing have secured a new concession. Pizza Hut, which is a local concessionaire, will be joining us in the terminal, and they are currently renovating their space. we don't have an exact date of when it'll be open, but we'll have, you know, like yet another option for folks to dine with. They will have actual seating inside their concession space too, which is nice, as well as some like clever delivery, pizza delivery within the terminal and things like that. So we'll let them do their announcements about that. And also we have had some of our regional airlines move into the A gate area that at one time was completely reserved for Raven. So Kenai Aviation has moved into that space, and now Aleutian Air has moved into that space as well. So both of those airlines used to be at L2, and they're now moving down into the A gate hallway down in the far south of the airport. I always get those a little confused, but I think most of you probably know where the Raven gates are. Okay, and so that's all the inside stuff. We also had, of course, a huge TSA weekend. Our passenger numbers this year will exceed 2019 once all the numbers are in. But Labor Day, we were about 104% of what our 2019 numbers were. So we're seeing a complete, you know, resurgence of travel. So I think that lends to why we've had congestion in parking and other things as well. As far as the land stuff goes, we don't really currently have any lease applications out there. The Atlas lease is still in negotiation. Nothing's been finalized. Development plans, future things. Next year we'll be working on the north side of the north terminal. They're going to be doing multiple improvements on that side, including improving concrete and some drainage and other items. And that's going to happen actually next year. The airport communications plan update, Eric informed me today that it is completed. So it just needs some sign off from airport management. And then you'll all be receiving an email with that. And it will be then posted online. So that has been completed. And I think that's what I mostly have in terms of my notes. So I am here to either answer questions, or if I don't have the answer, because this isn't my normal thing that I do, I will certainly take notes and take names, and we'll make sure that everyone gets their questions answered. So.
Well, thank you, Ruth, very much. I'm going to jump in because this is a continuation from last June when Eric was with us, and it's regarding the airport communications plan. So in June, we asked Eric, you know, what happens to our input? We put in extensive comments and amendments that we wanted considered. So do you have any idea if they were incorporated? And if not, how can we dialogue about that becoming a reality in the future?
Of your input being included into the communications plan? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't have any answers to that because I haven't actually read it myself, and sadly, because I wasn't involved, I can't directly speak to that. I can tell you just from a background of the communication plan, the whole idea of having that is to be able to better communicate with our community councils that border the airport, and to have a better, you know, working dialogue with you. So while I can't answer exactly like what your feedback was and what is going to be included, I think you'll be getting that email this week, and you'll probably be able to, you know, that will answer some of that question. And then at that point, if you were reading this and you're like, well, we weren't, you know, these things were not addressed, then we would absolutely encourage you then to, you know, reach back out to us and, you know, ask that question. And I will then, I can also ask and get Eric to like respond to that specific question tomorrow or the next day, or I guess tomorrow's Friday, so early next week.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
Sure.
Because we put a lot of time into that, and actually it's kind of a two-way communication plan. You know, there's a section that says this is what the airport commits to do to communicate with councils, and there's also a section that says this is what the councils are obligated to do to communicate with the airport. And so
Okay.
it does involve, it's not just a one-way street, and it wasn't meant to be that way. So,
Right.
so that sounds good. So thank you, Ruth. I appreciate it. I know that, let's see, one thing I wanted to bring up, and I can't remember what it was besides the communication plan. But anyway, does anybody else have any questions for Ruth on the airport report? And I can't think of what else I wanted to bring up, but that's my problem.
Well, I can hang out too if you think of it, and you can send me a little chat or something like that. So I
Sure.
can certainly sit on for a little bit.
And we're going to be, continuing with the agenda as far as other airport related items. And this
John's-
happens to me with every
John's
meeting.
got his hand up.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we'll deal with this later in the agenda, but when there was mention about what sort of lease applications are out there right now, there is the FAA lease application for the air control tower relocation. We'll talk about that later in the agenda.
Yes, that's exactly what popped into my brain, John. So thank you for tagging that.
Yeah, and currently there are the only one that's open, but is pending. We're still awaiting signatures. Is the Atlas development on the East Air Park.
Okay.
And if anybody's not familiar with that, please let me know, and I can certainly speak to that more.
Okay. This happens to me every time where I misplace my agenda. So, could somebody screen share our agenda so that I don't look foolish looking for my agenda, which has to be in my little circle here, but somehow it got incorporated into another file or something. So can one of the board screen share the agenda with me, please? I apologize. I'm not sure how this happens. I guess I should tape it to my arm or something. I'm not sure. But it's an airport related item. We do need
Yes.
to,
So next up, Kathy, is the old and new business. I think if we're through with our reports,
yes.
what's up next? And the first one is the ratification consideration for the air traffic control tower GA parking Lakewood relocation EA.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, John. And the board had a very busy summer, and we had to respond to things that had comment deadlines in the summertime period or public hearings in the summertime period. And so, we go ahead and submit things that we do need to ratify by the whole council once we meet again. And so, as John stated, we wrote a pretty comprehensive letter with regard to the environmental assessment that was out for the proposed control tower relocation and the terminal radar approach control facilities, as well as the relocation of Charlie parking and the partial relocation of Lake Hood Drive that go through Turnagain Bog wetlands. So if I can get a motion to approve, to ratify, and then we can, discuss if anybody has any questions about our board input, then that would be great. So
moved.
To ratify.
okay, so John, I heard you first. And then can I get a second, please?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Okay, so John, do you want to very briefly kind of give an overview of what we included in our comments on that? Because then it snowballs into the next agenda item, which is now out for public comment right now. So,
and so kind of as about a year ago, we submitted comments on some of the issues we wanted addressed in this environmental assessment that they were preparing as part of the scoping process. And I think it was probably somewhere around June 23rd of this year, we got comments back or responses back to our comments. And I have to say, we were really pretty
disappointed in the comments that they really didn't substantially dismiss or substantially address what we raised, and kind of dismissed all of them. And then this moved into a release of the EA for public comment with a deadline for putting in comments by August 10th. And so a number of us attended the open house in the Spenard Rec Center. In fact, one of the few members of the public were there. We're really turning in community council. And there were really 4 areas that we identified that needed to be addressed in the EA. One was the adequacy of their responses to our scoping comments that we submitted. The second one was really the adequacy of the draft EA and meeting the requirements under NEPA to look at things like alternatives for tower location, alternatives for the Charlie parking relocation, alternatives for the Lakewood Drive. And there were also areas where we felt it was really kind of dismissive of potential environmental consequences. We saw some areas where we thought there were some real deficiencies of analysis, and we asked them to do more work on that. And then we suggested a series of mitigation measures to address some of the environmental consequences like noise, traffic, air quality, wetlands, and things along those lines. And so we essentially put together a 4-page letter that actually more than 4 pages, more like 8 pages, that identified our concerns. And the FAA now has these. What they're going to do with them is unclear. We're kind of suggesting that they perhaps put out some detailed responses to the information we've provided. So I think that provides kind of a summary of what we've done. You know, it's not so much that we really oppose the project, that we just think they needed to do a better job of really acknowledging and addressing some of the impacts that would occur from this. So I guess, Kathy, with this being available to people as part of the packet, and that we're requesting ratification, are we looking for a motion to approve or ratify? What's the action here?
Yes, and you already made it, and Kathleen seconded it. So we're
maybe-
just under discussion of the ratification motion at this point.
Okay, good.
So does anybody have any questions? And you're right, John, it was an 8-page letter. We were tried to be very thorough and detailed, because there are negatives associated with this whole proposal of relocating the tower to where Charlie parking was, to now relocating Charlie parking to wetland, areas, and then to relocate the partially Lakewood Drive because they're relocating Charlie Park. So it's a domino thing. And so there's a lot to consider, and we feel like we've done a thorough job. So we would appreciate ratification voting on the work that the board did on this summer. Karen.
Just a quick note, the Army Corps of Engineers wetland permit for the filling they're going to do in to replace the lost plane parking is due on Monday, this coming Monday.
Yeah, and that's the next item on the agenda, but thank you for that good segue. Ratification of our comments, as John said, includes a lot of what we put in with environmental aspects and in the associated with the wetland fill. And so once we ratify these comments that we already submitted as a board, then the wetland core permit that is associated with the Charlie parking and partial relocation of Lakewood Drive and Turnagain Bog, as Karen said, comments are due on Monday. And so the board felt like we've already done the work for the most part to create comments for the core wetland fill permit application. And we can take what's out of this letter if the body ratifies our comments from August 10th, then we'll make sure we just pick things out of that that's appropriate to comment on the core permit for next Monday, and then just have that already approved. So so any other issues or comments or questions about ratification of our August 8th, was it August 8th? No, August 10th. Letter we submitted on the environmental assessment of all of these multifaceted major things associated with the relocation of the control tower. If not, let's go ahead and take a vote. So we'll need a hand vote for this. So please raise your hand either through the reactions, Zoom, or just, so if we can see you, if you're showing visual, then we can see your hand as well. So all in favor of ratification, please raise your hand. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. I've got 9 yes. Does that look like oh, wait a minute. I haven't gone to the panel 2 yet. 1 of 2. Okay, so if I can have help with counting hands here, I appreciate it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I've got 9. Does that look correct? I'm going to say yes. Okay, are there any so everybody lower your hands if you were voting yes. And then is there any opposition? Okay, I'm not seeing any opposition. So what ratification does for this letter passes. So thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is, as I just stated, if now that we have approved those comments, John, maybe you can help me out with how we word a motion so that we can submit comments to the Corps of Engineers for the wetland fill permit of Turnagain Bog for the Charlie parking and Lakehood Drive partial relocation projects.
So I guess I would move to excerpt relevant portions of our comments on the EA to include in the comments on the core wetlands permit.
This is Pat. I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you, Pat. So are there any questions about that?
Let me maybe add one thing to this, because the Corps of Engineers, they're required to look at many of the same things that are in an environmental assessment. So I think a lot of our comments are going to be germane, and they're going to be things that are specific to the wetlands and wetlands mitigation, but also they do need to consider the potential other environmental consequences of the proposed action. So I think it's going to be a pretty easy job of just picking out the pieces that appear to apply from the EA letter and put those in our comments on the core permit.
Yeah.
And I'd like to add the one difference might be requesting specific mitigation actions as opposed to just providing just straight comments. The current wetland permit proposes compensatory mitigation, which is just buying wetland credits from a bank. And I think it might be appropriate to request on-site if that's a doable thing.
That's a great add. I think because what you've hit on, Karen, is that, we are concerned that sometimes with wetlands mitigation, they can buy credits somewhere else and they're not necessarily mitigating some of the impacts that are occurring on site with wetlands and water quality and things like that. So that's a great point to add. Thank you.
So is that not covered in our 8-page letter?
I think it is, but I think we'll want to take
We'll want to
particular
make sure
attention to
that
look at it.
that's, yeah, that's part of it. That's a big part of it. And that's something that TCC has asked for probably a few decades now, as Turnagain Bog and certainly Postmark Bog now is almost completely filled, or will be once the FedEx expansion and Alaska cargo and cold storage projects are completed. So the remaining areas of Turnagain Bog, it's a Class A wetland, high value. What's left becomes even more and more valuable. And so on-site mitigation would be highly appropriate. So So, that's a good add. So does anybody else have any comments or questions on this agenda item? If not, let's go ahead and take a vote. So all in favor of John's motion to take out relevant portions of the letter that we just ratified to send to the Corps with regard to the wetland fill permit that has been requested to fill parts of Turnigan Bog for the Charlie parking and partial Lake Hood Drive relocation. So all in favor, express yes. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It looks like we have 10. Does anybody see any others besides 10? 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks like we've got 10 yes. So everybody lower your hands, please. Is there any opposition to the motion? Any opposition? I don't see any, so that motion passes. So thank you, and we'll get comments submitted by next Monday, next Monday's deadline. Oh, jeez. Right. Okay, so John, remind me what the next item on the agenda is.
So
It's
that,
gonna be another ratification.
no, it's actually approval. It's approval
Oh, that's
consideration
right. Approval.
for the FAA lease application for the control tower. Yep.
Okay, so also besides the wetland fill permit is just the actual lease permit application that FAA has submitted in order for this control tower relocation to be located where Charlie parking was. I guess it doesn't exist anymore. There's no planes on that lot anymore, I don't think. So the comment deadline for that is next Wednesday, September 11th. So again, it's the kind of thing where because we ratified the letter with regard to the environmental assessment on all of these projects, the idea is, we don't really have to recreate the wheel. We can pull things out like we just passed before, if that's the wish of the body. So John, maybe you can take this one again and see if you can provide a motion.
So I would move to excerpt appropriate comments from our letter on the EA to include on comments for the FAA lease application for the control tower. And I guess I'll add more detail after making that motion.
Okay, can I have a second, please? I'll second it. So that motion is moved by John and seconded by me to do something similar, as John said, take out what's relevant from our EA comments and apply it to just what would be pertaining with the lease application that FAA is submitting.
And Kathy, to I think echo what Karen said a little bit earlier, because this is a lease application, we're looking at what might be some of the conditions on the lease and things that might be mitigation or requests to regard to avoid or minimize impacts. So I think they would be things that we would request that the airport consider as conditions of the lease application. And we can look at those. I think a couple of us have noticed that the EA has not been finalized yet. The finding of no significant impact on the EA has not been finalized yet. And one might wonder as to whether or not they could actually want to issue the lease application before those things are finalized. But I would assume they want to have this in motion so that if it is finalized, they can move fairly quickly. That's my observation.
Yeah, good point, John. I don't know when the EA is going to be officially finalized. So yeah, we're just, we've got a deadline we need to meet, so we gotta do what we can. Is there any other comments or questions with regard to this motion on the FAA lease application for relocation of the control tower and the other facility that's going to be right there that it's got a name to it, the ATCT. If not, let's go ahead and vote. So once again, all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Dan, are you voting yes or no?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 11 yeses. And is there, so everybody please lower your hands. And then is there any opposition to the motion? Any no votes? Again, I don't see any. Oh, Kathleen, were you a yes or a no? You have your
I
hand up.
was a yes, and I'm trying to take my hand down now. I was a
Okay,
yes.
So it looks like we've got 0 no's again. So that motion passes. So thank you for bearing with us on all of this layered action that we need to be taking that's airport related on pretty significant projects and proposals that are all tied together. So we appreciate your interest in this. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is a whole different thing. So we were approached by Alaska Lands, and we have now, since I don't have my agenda, Stacy, you're presenting, is that correct?
Yes, I am, Kathy. Thank you for
Okay.
having me.
Certainly. So this is with regard to the Wood Lake subdivision plating variance item that's come up. So I will give the floor to you, Stacy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So while I speak, you guys could see what's going on. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet. There. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Stacy Wessel. I am with AK Lands Land Surveying. I am working with the owners, Nancy Sarber, Vicki, and Greg Sarber. They are online as well to answer any question, but I am currently working with the owners to subdivide this lot that they own, which is in pink right here, into 4 lots. So this property actually has been on the market for quite some time. There's been a lot of interest, but given the economy and high interest rates, some of the potential buyers are finding it hard to obtain the funds. So it's been suggested to go ahead and subdivide these lots to make it more feasible for potential buyers to buy these lots. So as you can see, the lot is in pink, and it goes around here, and it goes around a 7-unit multiplex as well as a 4-unit multiplex. And if you'd like me to zoom out, you could see this as well. Is this can you see this zooming in and zooming out? Is it working well?
Yes.
It is for me. Any other input from any attendees? Are we all good?
So at this time, there was a possible issue with variance to a lot depth width ratio. Actually, it has been resolved through the municipality of Anchorage, so this has become a short plat. But I did want to join the community council and just make you aware of the project, and if you had any questions. There's no at this time, there's no development, there's no plans for development. And this is just a short plat, and I'm just here to present it. And please ask me any questions, as well as the owners are online as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. I appreciate it. So, I'm not going to be able to see. I know Karen, you've got your hand raised, so let's start with you for questions or comments.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the presentation, Stacy. It looks like the lot to the left of the fourplex might be parking for the fourplex. Is that the case? What are the parking implications for either the existing sevenplex or the fourplex from this subdivision?
So that's a really good question, Karen, and I'm glad you brought that up. Currently, the parking for the sevenplex is in front of the units right here, and the parking for the fourplex is right here. At first, we had the proposed lot lines go around the parking. However, there are utilities that are in that area, so we had to pull the lot line over to avoid crossing utilities. However, for this platting action, if it does go through, right, we'll have to do a parking agreement between proposed lot 2D and proposed lot 2C. So at this time, it's just parking here and of course parking here.
And if that couldn't be worked out, what would happen for the fourplex?
So it will be part of my assumption is it will work out. In order to subdivide these, an agreement does need to be reached because the fourplex uses this parking. So there needs to be a shared agreement for parking right here for proposed lot 2C to use it. That would be the easiest and cleanest way to fix that, since the proposed lot line is going through it.
So then the other two lots to the left could be sold completely, entirely, without interfering with anything going on in the developed areas.
Yes. Yep.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And Dave Weir, I see your hand is raised, so let's go to you next, please.
Yes, thank you. Just to clarification, I own one of the condos in Carlton Square that is basically directly across from the sevenplex.
Okay.
And I actually emailed you and you replied, but then I asked you some additional questions and you did not reply. I asked for more information about what the lot lights were. You provided them now, but I had addressed some couple of issues that I asked you about. I don't know if you had any clarification on it, but I was the president of the Carlton Square HOA for 6 years or something. And I believe Roberta, who is the current president, is on the meeting also. About a actual agreement between this property and Carlton Square, because they access their property over our property. And they have been paying for a snow removal because obviously they need to get access to their lot. So they have been paying a portion. I believe it's about 21% of whatever the snow bill was every year, and they've been doing it. We don't have a formal agreement with them as far as I could ever find. I don't know if you found anything, but my big concern is now you're going to add more property. I understand you said that there is no current plans for construction, but the plan is that there will be buildings on the additional 2 lots, which will increase more traffic, more wear and tear on the driveway, which we just put in a brand new driveway in Carlton Square, which included a portion of the parking lot for the sevenplex and well, this whole property. So Cyber did actually pay a portion of the paving. So I do want to include that they did. And so that was great, but there's going to be more wear and tear. And how are we going to structure any kind of agreement between 4 separate owners, and how are you going to break it up on who's going to pay what? That's a big concern to me. Drainage was another issue when we redid the driveway. The drainage was basically not going away, so we structured this to go through and basically goes onto the two vacant lots that you're suggesting. So the water, because there is no storm drain in this property. So if they build buildings there, that water's not going to go anywhere other than in the street and into people's basically basements. So the storm drain is a water issue, is a big issue. Parking is an absolute huge issue. All the people in that 11-plex park in Carlton parking. We have signs up, but they park in there. So basically straight across from them, we have Carlton parking. They park there. Right to the side of it, basically the southern side of the 11-plex, where you see two white cars and some other ones. That's our parking, but all those rental properties, they park there. They don't just park in front of theirs. And so when we have people that come over, or if my daughter lives there and my wife and we don't have parking because all the rental people take up the parking. Then you're going to there eventually be two more houses or rental property or multiplex where it's going to be even harder for parking. So that is a huge issue. And you're already saying that the 4-plex and the 11-plex or 7-plex have to have an agreement. Well, what about the agreement between us? Because they're using our parking all the time.
Okay, so thank you. You brought up a number of issues. First and foremost, I do want to say I apologize for not getting back to you on the email. And I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're asking me the questions now. I do remember the email coming through and you are correct. I did not respond. So, or I responded vaguely. So I guess your first issue that you had brought up was the use of Carlton Square, the use of the driveway and the access, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the agreements to, if these were developed, how are they going to contribute to the costs? Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, there's no written agreement right now for any kind of egress into their property that I could find. And I was hoping that maybe you had more access than what I had. But even as president, when I was president of the HOA, I dug around as much as I could and could not find any recorded agreement between the current owners. And now you're suggesting to have 4 separate owners. Well, something needs to be in writing so that all the owners know what their responsibility to egress that property. So I mean, because they're going across Carlton Square's property.
Okay. Okay. I don't know how to answer that question right now, Dave. It sounds like there's several moving pieces with the subdivision and what the potential buyer is going to do. Yes, I see your worst case scenario, more buildings get put in this lot, which creates more activity along in this area. At this moment, I don't know how to answer that question or really help you try to figure that out without knowing first and foremost, buying it and whom's going to buy it. And if this proposed subdivision, if those lots do get developed, I'm going to have to stick to it just being the subdivision plat. And yes, the goal of the subdivision, these lots, is to sell them fee simple, to make it easier for folks to purchase. So I will make a note of it, and I definitely encourage you to reach out to the owners. In regards to drainage, if any development does happen, that will, for the permitting process, drainage will have to be reviewed. Okay. That is part of it. I'm confused when you were talking about parking so we talked about the development portion. And we talked about this proposed, this access to these areas, to these lots. And now we're talking about parking. Dave, did you say that you were saying that these folks park here?
No,
I'm sorry.
basically, they face basically to the northeast. Is how they face. The building that they face is, I live in that building. And off to the northwest is a section of parking. There's one car parked there currently. It's a
Yep.
darker color. I wish I could, right there. Okay.
Right here.
That
Okay.
area. See, as your property line draws, that's their parking is only right in front of their unit. Well, they park all along our parking right there. So then also, if you look on the southeast portion where there's two white cars and two black cars, dark, right? Yeah, right there.
Yep.
That's also our parking. They also park there. So what happens is that when I have guests come over, or if there's my wife, my daughter and I both have vehicles, we only have 2 spots inside of our garage. One of us has to park outside. Then there's no parking for us because the tenants all have a minimum of 2 cars, if not 3 cars, or they don't want, they have stuff in front of their house and they just choose not to park in front of their unit, and they park, even though we have Carlton parking signs only, they just ignore it. And I'm sure that the people in the fourplex unit also park in the other area because parking is just always an issue. And so now you're going to limit it even more by adding, and I know it's proposed and there's no plan, but nobody's going to buy either one of those vacant lots and not build something on them. Would you agree?
Well, I will say there are other ideas to work with the potential buyer for this. It sounds like the potential buyer has, you know, a lot to look forward in communicating with Carlton Square condominiums and speaking with them, and may even, you know, there could be possibility of leasing portions of this lot out to help with parking. Yes, development's expensive. No, I can't tell you if someone's not. Yes, the end goal is a building, but I do think that there is some potential to, you know, talk with the new owner if they're buying a portions. So.
Well,
Okay, and I'm gonna interject here because I know this is extending, you know, beyond the allotted time. This is, you know, awfully detailed, and I see at least 4 other, or, you know, 3 other people have their hands up. So, I'm not sure how to proceed because all of this is really relevant. Can you once again clarify that this is a short plat, and so this will not go before Planning and Zoning Commission or the Assembly for approval? There won't be any other opportunity to provide public input on this proposal?
You can provide public input with the municipality of Anchorage, but yes, it is a short plat. I am here on my own accord to share this with you and to be open about the project.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So, and that is it. I also do want to clarify that the aerial image is in back, but it could be several 10 feet off from the true property lines. This is a little bit more of a pretty picture for you. So it's not exact.
So John, you've got your hand raised. Are you proposing some kind of way forward with this?
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. If this is a short plat, I would suggest that members of the Carlton Square Homeowners Association and property owners submit comments to the municipality on their concerns regarding parking, and maybe there's some way to look at a plat note or some other form of condition regarding that. I think talking to the property owners would also be a wise move for both the property owners and the neighborhood. You know, one of my questions would be, what are these lots zoned as, and what potential density could be put into them, which then talks about how much more traffic and parking is generated. And I don't think we want to go into that at this meeting, but I think those would be questions. If I lived in Carlton Square, I would be interested in knowing.
Okay, good suggestion. So I want to briefly I see Roxanne, Peter, you have your hand raised, and then Tony, your hand raised. And so please try and be brief and keep in mind what John just suggested is probably a way forward. Since we can't
Absolutely.
provide any input as far as at a public hearing or,
Right. No, David did a great job covering a lot of it. I'm currently on the HOA board for Carlton Square, and from what I understand as well, that lot is used by those properties for their portion of snow remove or for their snow to be stored there in the winter. So that's another thing to consider as well in all of this planning is where's all of that snow going to go. But yeah, no, David did a really good job of covering a lot of the potential concerns we have, especially around parking. They definitely, parking is an issue. So thank you very much.
well, thank you. I appreciate it. And then Tony?
Yes, I'll keep it pretty direct here. I actually represent some property owners over on Wagner estate side of lot 2A, and where I'm wondering if there is a current easement or if there's a plan to change the easement agreement. That back alley there has an easement with the municipality, and it's been a pain. I know someone raised some concerns about parking in that back wooded area. It's been an area of trouble during the summer, especially with the parking in the empty lot area during the summer. And we're wondering if there's going to be any changes between the Woodland subdivision as well as the back.
Sorry, Tony, you're kind of fading out. I didn't catch the last part of your statement there.
Is there going to be any changes to the easement, municipality easement between the Woodland Lake subdivision and the Wagner subdivision on the left side of 2A there on the Northern Light side?
So you're speaking about right here?
So you see there's a fence line that pretty much runs east to west.
Yep, right here.
Yes, and on the left side there is an easement that has to be maintained. It's been a pain to maintain it with with other property owners, and I'm wondering if that easement if it's being planned to be extended through to the Woodland subdivision side, or if it's not going to extend through.
So Tony, those type of issues, if it's a utility easement, they come up during the conditions of approval phase. So if the utilities need more easement, they request it during the platting process. But at this time, that hasn't been looked into or discussed.
Okay. The second question is there's no plans to remove the barricade separating the east and west side of Carlton Avenue?
At this time, there's not.
Okay. And yeah, other than that, just that whole parking area, I understand during the wintertime it's used for snow removal. But during the summertime, keeping that easement clear of riffraff camps, homeless camps and such has been pretty tough over the years. This last year or two, it's been a little easier. But yeah, a lot of stuff tends to happen in that back area that goes unnoticed and until it becomes a problem. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Tony. And I'm not sure if anybody else has their hand raised. Can the board help me out on this? With screen share, I'm not seeing everybody. So is there anybody else that has your hand raised that hasn't spoken yet? Okay, if not.
I don't see anybody, Kathy.
Okay, thanks, John. So Stacy, I guess clearly there are probably some fairly significant issues associated with the proposal to.
Excuse me, I've been trying to raise my hand. I'm on my phone because my computer died. And I am the current president for Carlton Square Condominiums. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Can you give your name, please? So are you Roberta?
I'm Roberta Craig.
Okay, thank you, Roberta.
And I can't figure out how to raise my hand on the phone.
That's okay. If you can be brief, I appreciate your patience.
My question is, Stacy, you are suggesting that we submit comment to the municipality. This is the first time we are finding out any information about this replatting and development. So my question and biggest concern is, how long do we have to submit comment? And do we have a say and say, no, we don't want this to happen?
So please submit your comments. I could get you an answer to a deadline tomorrow.
Okay.
Please email me.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I do not have the deadline on top of my head. My assumption would be a couple weeks.
Okay.
Because
the letter that came to us was blank. It just had that this event was taking place tonight and no further information.
Yes. Yes, you are correct. And next time I send out a letter, I will add more information. There was a lot of concern and I answered the phone call on Saturday, trying to help with folks talk about this. So as Kathy had stated, we are not going in front of the plating board and doing a variance. This will be a short plat. I am here. The owners are online to answer any questions and to be open with Carlton Square. This is a very unique place and it's a great little hub of community. And I'm very happy to get all the feedback in and whatnot. So I think there is lots of opportunities for this to be a development. It sounds like you need parking. So sounds like parking should be developed. Sounds like this is a big need. Sounds like snow removal is a big need. And going forward, that could happen, right? So I am glad that I am here and we're talking about this subdivision. So
Okay,
yes.
and sorry, I'm going to interject just because we're way over time, but I see on the chat room, which I don't monitor fully, so I appreciate board help on monitoring chat. But Tony asked a really good question. So where would anybody submit comments? Who would they address that to?
The planning department at the MOA. I could put the email in the chat right now. One sec.
And there was another comment in the chat about a project ID or a way to address the project. So if we could get that too, please.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Is there a project ID or a number we can refer to? Not at this moment is there a project number, but I could tell you the subdivision name and that would help. One sec.
That would be the Lakewood subdivision. There's a plat number, if that helps.
Yeah, that would be pretty important. Pat, you've got your hand raised quickly. Pat Redmond. You're unmute. If you have a question, do you want to unmute yourself, please? Your hand is raised.
Sorry about that. I'm on my phone, so I couldn't find the thing. Someone asked about if they had the right to oppose that, to say no. And yes, they do. In their comments, they can say no, that they don't want it. But it's it just depends on what happens when as it goes through the process. But you're always able to say yes or no to an issue, whether or not that anybody else will agree with you is something else, but you can say no.
Thank you, Pat. That's a very obvious but important info to you. So I think at this point, since there really isn't a formal process for the community council to provide input in terms of a public hearing in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission or in front of the Assembly. I'm not sure if the body wants to take a formal position on this and just submit a letter, reflecting what we would do at this meeting. I mean, that's always a possibility, but we have to wrap this up. So John, I'm gonna cede to you on this one as well, for a final take on if we should take any action, and if so, what?
I'm sort of thinking about that. I mean, I think it's appropriate for the folks who are in the affected neighborhoods to submit comments on this. If we were to take any action, I guess as a community council, we might perhaps recommend that the applicants and the property representatives work with the affected homeowner associations and neighbors to try to address some of the issues that have been raised associated with the replat.
Okay, do you want to make that into a motion, or do we just let the individual property owners and homeowners provide their input?
I'll make a motion. We'll see if anybody seconds it and what the vote is. So I would move that the Turnigan Community Council submit comments to the Municipal Planning Department on the proposed short replat to recommend that the representative and the property owners work with the homeowners association and other affected neighbors to try to address some of the issues in the replat process.
I second that.
Okay, and who was the second? Sorry, I didn't.
Angela.
Oh, Angela. Okay, Angela. Okay, I did not get all that written down, to be honest. So, I can't repeat it. I'm sorry. I wish I knew shorthand. So if you want to say it again slowly or type it out and put it in the chat room, or
I'll say it again slowly. I recommend the Turnigan Community Council submit comments to the Municipal Planning Department on the short plat to recommend that the owners' representatives and the owners work with representatives of the homeowners association and other affected properties to try to resolve issues raised regarding parking, snow removal, and other issues.
I think that this is a great time to work with any potential buyer on getting an agreement in place for these lots, or a lease in place for these lots for snow removal and for parking. I think this is an excellent time to do that. Even, having each one of these lots, but I think it's something that needs to be in place, it sounds like. And I think that the subdivision plat can really help facilitate that need right now. I really do. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Stacy. I'm gonna have to cut this off because we're way behind. I don't even have my agenda in front of me, and I know we're way behind, but this is an important topic that I appreciate has been brought to the council. So we need to vote on John's motion. And he said it twice, so I'm not going to repeat it again. So if you can raise your hand, all in favor of TCC submitting comments that were referenced in John's motion. So, well, Dan, are you voting?
I put my hand up.
No. 14, 15. I've got 15. Does that look accurate? I believe it is. And now everybody can lower your hand, please. And is there anybody opposed to the motion? I don't see any hands raised, so that motion passes. So we will we'll craft that and get that submitted reflecting our support of this motion. So thank you so much, all of the neighbors. Thank you, Stacy. And any other people that were involved in this. Stacy, could you email me that that photo that you know, to show where they would be subdivided, where the 4 subdivision lines would go, that you shared on with us this evening?
Yes, I could get a screenshot for you. This is actually in CAD, so I will screenshot it and share it with
Okay.
you.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. That sounds fine.
Okay.
You know, whatever works in this day and age. 82,439. Okay, so I'm writing down in the chat this info as far as what it is referred to very quickly, in case I lose my chat. Okay, thank you so much. Now, we have another presentation on our agenda.
Kathy, if
and-
I can interrupt, I just have a quick question before we move on
Yes,
to
Dave.
Stacy.
Oh.
If there is no currently recorded egress to this property over Carlton Square, could Carlton Square not block access and not let anybody drive to those properties? Would that not be Carlton Square's right? I'm not suggesting that we do. I'm just saying though that if there is nothing currently recorded and in an agreement between the current property owner and Carlton Square, then we could block access as far as I understand.
Fortunately, that is a legal question, and I do not have any type of authority to say if you can or can't block that.
No, I'm not really asking the question for you to answer me. I think you, as a company who is in the process of subdividing this, should know the answer to that. That's why I asked you in the email if you found any kind of recorded egress, because currently, if there isn't any, then there's no legal right to subdivide that, right?
Can you give me 1 minute to show you that recorded document? Yes, I apologize that I did not get you that, but I could bring it up right now and show it to you. One sec.
We really.
Is there any way we could call order on this
Yeah,
and have
we
it go
really don't.
offline?
Yeah, we really don't.
We gotta go. I gotta go to bed.
I agree, Sarah. Okay, so I apologize, but you guys communicate with each other and keep TCC in the loop on that last item that you just brought up, Dave, because that sounds fairly, a fairly important item. So, but we do need to move on. We have another presenter on our agenda with regard to, and thank you again, everybody, for participating in this. It's called Project Anchorage, and let's see. I forgot who is
Hi,
presenting.
Kathy. It's me.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Kathleen Cardle.
Kathleen, that you've been sitting there forever and chatting with us.
No,
Okay,
you're good.
Kathleen, you have the floor. Please give a very brief but important
Yes.
overview of Project Anchorage. Thank you.
That's my goal. I did hear the question earlier that Assembly Member Brawley was able to answer. So I know that I hope to get some questions to field and take back and hopefully answer. But I'm Kathleen McCardle. As mentioned, I'm the President and CEO of the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce. I have been in this position just approaching a year. I have been a 10-year resident of Anchorage, and this has been my 3rd summer living in the Turnagain neighborhood. So this is my community council. So did volunteer as a representative from the Business Coalition, as mentioned, for Project Anchorage to communicate to this group. So the Anchorage Chamber is a group that its board did decide to support this project initiative. As you may have been following over the years, I know some of this group is engaged following the AEDC's informative luncheons and their data reporting on our community and workforce. A trend over many years has been the outmigration of our community impacting workforce and, the effects of that as they trickle through our local economy. So this proposal has come out of a response to that. There was an independent study of the Anchorage community and how approachable and engaging it is from a quality of place perspective. Do people want to live here, move here? And there's multiple factors that are impacting that. But this is an attempt to help in the Choose Anchorage framework, alleviate some of those factors. So Project Anchorage is a gosh, I had it right up here. It's stemmed from this business coalition. There was a working group formed to kind of work through all the ins and outs of the proposal along with data. And the intent is to, I guess I should start with what it is. Sorry, I know some of you already know what it is. Here we go. It's a sales tax proposal for our community. Sorry, got too many screens going. With the intent at the end of the day to lower the property tax burden for both homeowners and commercial property owners, kickstart Anchorage's economy, and also enable the visitors to our community to contribute as well. So this would lower not only housing costs for homeowners through the property tax structure of it, it would also help kickstart Anchorage's economy and make sure that anyone who is spending money in Anchorage is contributing, be it tourists, those from across our state, or those who commute from the valley. So it would be, the proposal is that would go before the assembly over the fall for their approval before being potentially entered on April's municipal ballot. Would be introducing a 3% sales tax to all sales that go through, with some exceptions to help alleviate the burden on low-income families for things like food from the grocery store, child care products, health products, child care itself, medical, lease, rent, things like that would all be excluded. Things you might see in a typical community with a history of sales tax. That's all laid out in the proposal. And of that 3%, 1% would be going toward a capital improvement project, as mentioned, I think cited on the agenda item. The remaining 2% of that proposal would be directed to dollar for dollar property tax relief for homeowners and commercial property owners. So that again would help with the property tax burden we see from municipal bonds that raise money for projects across our community. Anchorage's property taxes in the top 10% in the nation, and so it does make homeownership a bit out of scope and unaffordable for some families, and that would be a helpful lever to also impact the homeownership element. But what I really do want to talk about today is the capital project that we are looking for additional support on. There's a deadline for September 15th, which is through next week. I believe it's Sunday. And we are accepting proposals to be considered for the capital improvement project. We saw some of the biggest things in Anchorage that are incredible to our community, like the PAC, Sullivan Arena, all of those things. The trail system came out of the Project 80s investments in our community, and we really haven't seen much like that since then. So this would be an attempt to really make a targeted effort on improving quality of life and livability in different areas across our community based on community input. The ballot proposal would be directly tied to the projects that are submitted. And through that, it would be a sunset. The tax would sunset when the project budgets are met. It's a way to give something to our community that's debt-free, that at the time of its completion, that we've got everything all paid for along the way because we budgeted it ahead of time and we paid for it ahead of time. This has been a model that Oklahoma City has used to really bring life to their community, and we see it as an opportunity to really invest in Anchorage, making our community more vibrant, giving it more options and investment in different areas that could also then further lend themselves to additional public-private investment and lead to things like additional housing opportunities, additional growth opportunities, and ways to really make our city a shining star and bring talent and retain talent, maybe bring our kids back, the ones that went out of state for college and didn't come back, the ones who might be thinking about Anchorage for a job, but doing internet searches about, is it a good place to live, and really transform the future for our community.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Kathleen, I think I'm gonna cut you off there.
Yeah, and that's
See if
about what
there's
I've
any
got.
quick questions. Pat, you've got a question?
I do. You mentioned being these debt-free, but what about long-term maintenance of projects? That's a concern I have.
Yeah,
Even the
that's
current, the Project 80s. So I'm
Yes.
gonna go offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Yes, that's one of those lessons learned from those projects. And right now we've established a costing committee that not only in addition to putting together the budget for the projects, would be looking at what is it, M&O, maintenance operations. Would it be in like a bond, not a bond, a trust, set aside funds to at least put some long-term projections on making sure that that is funded upfront. That's definitely a point of conversation as we're still finalizing the proposal before it gets on the Assembly's desk for their official work sessions and review that they'll thoughtfully be doing.
Okay, anybody else have any questions on this proposal? I guess I have a question. I'm still not sure. So let's say that Turnigan Community Council, we submit our CIP ranking.
Sure.
This, because that would be the best way to go about providing input since we've already approved that list. But then who is it that would choose the actual projects, and how many are we talking about? Are we talking about 2 or 5 or 20? Or, I mean, I'm a little confused what the scope of this is.
That's a great question. Thank you. So there is a project selection committee that is sort of being formed of the business coalition, but the projects would be on the ballot. So there'll be full transparency at the end about what's going to be happening with this proposed revenue. The projections on the funds are that this 1% for capital would be about $60 million a year. So if we timeline that out, it'll kind of depend on the project proposals that come in. It might be one massive one, but it'll probably be a handful of projects that are still very impactful, distributed throughout our community. It could be anywhere from Clutina to Girdwood. So we just want to know what the community has in mind. What does Turnigan want to see for this community, but also in the other areas that you recreate or work, what would be an impactful area. The website I dropped in the chat is projectanchorage.com, and that's where you can submit a proposal. There's a red button, and all those will be considered by the project selection committee in tandem with the costing committee to put together a package for the Assembly to consider.
Okay, thank you. John.
Actually, Marnie has a question.
Yeah,
So
Sorry,
hi.
Marnie.
Hi, good morning, good evening. Just a housekeeping question. Is there a mechanism for the public to see the array of project suggestions that you've received, or just the selected tier?
I'm not sure if we have that built in. We kind of talked about that. Should we have like a voting system along the way, like upvote things? But I know Jana, the AEDC's president and CEO, did refer to some of the ideas during her luncheon. And there's been things like Chester Creek redevelopment around UMed to make that area more like accessible and walkable. Ship Creek redevelopment. outdoor or public sauna areas, like reminiscent of the Nordic Spa, but in Anchorage. You know, it's really been and more, much more. I think it's been upwards of like 200 proposals that do sort of align with themes and some repetitive ones, but there's accepting more through September 15th if you're not sure that yours is your idea for innovation and renovation of our community. Please put in a submission as detailed or as brief as you have in mind. And if there's any additional questions or clarity, they'll follow up with you.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I did submit an idea, but got no confirmation, so I'm just.
Yeah, no. It's in the hopper though.
Thanks,
All
Barney.
right.
Thanks, Kathleen. So, very quickly, Karen, you submitted you posted something on the chat room, which I think is a good question to bring up if you want to.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just wanted to note that sales taxes are typically disproportionately harmful to low-income residents compared to others. And is there anything proposed in this to help protect neighbors needing to buy food, basic unavoidable purchases?
Yes, and I did briefly refer to some exemptions, and I've got my list now. So the exemptions for household necessities are currently as follows: most groceries, medical care, rental housing, financial services, gasoline, childcare, and products. And then the cap on all of these taxes, sales tax on a single transaction would be a $1,000 transaction. So the most anyone would pay at a single transaction would be $30 at the 3% rate.
Thanks for that.
Oh, thank you. That's definitely something on our mind, is the potential impacts for all of our community.
Okay, thank you so much. So, I don't think this is probably anything that we would be taking any action on. That was just a really good informational presentation since it's coming up, and it'll go before the assembly sometime in the next month or two. Does that sound reasonable? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, we were targeting an October timeline to make sure they have plenty of time to pull it through the work session process and get any amendments or reviews in place. But the September 15th deadline is the one we wanted to reinforce today for those capital improvement projects. So please, individually, and not necessarily as a council, please crowdsource. We're crowdsourcing those ideas. We do want it to be community driven.
Okay, thank you so much, Kathleen. I appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Okay, I think ratification for more TCC letters are on the agenda next. Is that correct, John?
That is correct. It's AO 2023-87 S1 Home Initiative.
Okay, I'll let you take the lead on that.
Okay, I might suggest, since I think I have the next two items, which is this and Fish Creek, that I move that we extend the meeting to 9:10, and I promise to get done by then.
This is Pat. I'll second it.
Okay, is there any opposition to extend to, what did you say,
9:10.
The meeting to 9:10? Any opposition? Okay, that is approved.
Okay, so this letter that we submitted is part of a suite of things that came through the Home Initiative, which most of you might remember started with, I think, a very good proposal to reduce the number of zoning districts in Anchorage to try to provide incentives for building more housing. And I do want to thank the sponsors, Anna Brawley, Daniel Voland, and Meg Zalatel, that even though we have had our differences over some of the issues, that I think their objectives and their goals are really, really necessary, and look forward to continuing discussion. So after kind of a number of hearings and comments back and forth, 2387 reduced the changes which were originally proposed of reducing 15 zoning districts, I think, down to 5, and took more of a first step that had to do with allowing duplexes in all zoning districts. And those duplexes could be detached structures. And so that is what came up for a vote. We did submit some comments, and those I'll maybe move to ratify our comments and then talk a little bit about it a bit more afterwards. So I would move that we ratify the comments that the Turnagain Community Council submitted on AO 2023-87 on the Home Initiative proposal.
Okay, thank you, John. Is there a second?
I'll
I'll
second it.
Oh, okay, Kathleen, you're the second. Thank you, Kathleen. Okay, John.
So in the end, I think there were a number of community councils that were concerned about this. And our position was that we conditionally supported the idea of allowing duplexes in all single family zones. And part of the intent there is to allow people who are living in single family homes to perhaps subdivide their home to have additional income or to have space for relatives or children or things like that. So we felt that it was a good proposal, but we had some conditions to it. After much debate, it did pass. They did keep in the detached structures. And so that is kind of the first step. And I think there's a couple other things that I will add under the land use committee in terms of where some of this is going, but let me leave it at that. See if there's any questions.
Okay, any questions for John? Okay, so yeah, the board did approve this during the summer months and provided our input. So all in favor of ratification of TCC board letter on AO 2024, excuse me, 2023-87 S1, please raise your hand. Okay, so 2, 9. Dan, are you voting?
I'm voting yes, but I can't find my hand.
Okay, I've got 11 then, if I counted correctly. So is there any opposition? Everybody lower your hands, please. And is there any opposition to this? And Carolyn, is that an opposition hand?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that is yes on 11 and no 1, and so that motion passes. And welcome, Carolyn. Okay, so moving on to another letter that was submitted by the board that was associated in some degree, to some degree, with the home initiative effort. John, I'll let you go ahead and discuss that and probably go ahead and make a motion as well.
Well, so this is the one that didn't get included in the agenda, if I'm not mistaken, and we're going
right.
to take it up in October. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if it got posted on our website to refer to, because I didn't check since
I would
Natalie at
suggest
FCC did it differently than I had hoped she was going to do it, but it
I would say
wasn't.
just given the time, we have a couple other things to cover. Is why don't we put that on the agenda for October? But I will kind of cover that with one other related home initiative type item under the land use committee report.
Okay, that sounds fine. Since it's not even on the agenda, that's just a decision to do. We'll put it on October TCC meeting for ratification.
So there were, this is moving to land use committee. There were a couple of companion assembly ordinances also associated with the home initiative. And one of them was to make some recommended language changes to the 2020 comp plan and the 2024 land use plan to allow passage of the broader, more ambitious home initiative reduction of zoning districts. And so we had some concerns about the nature of those changes. We had some concerns about planning comments that weren't addressed and some planning and zoning comments. And so we did submit testimony to oppose that motion. And that's the thing we're going to ratify. If I remember correctly, that got withdrawn, and I think it was replaced by an assembly resolution to ask the administration to do a much more targeted review of the 2020 comp plan and the 2024 land use plan, which will involve public input, but also try to keep it on an efficient schedule. So in that particular case, we testified on something that submitted comments that ended up being withdrawn and not approved. So that was that item. There was a third assembly resolution associated with this, which looked to formalize what was an assembly practice to waive review by the planning department and the planning and zoning commission on land use items when the assembly felt it was pertinent. And we did not submit testimony on that system comments, but we did testify before the assembly that we had concerns about when that would be used and how often it would be used. And it did get passed. I think our concerns remain the same, that we hope that's going to be the exception to the rule as compared to a common procedure to waive review of planning and zoning and planning department. So that was kind of the suite of issues associated with the home initiative.
Okay, yeah. That brings back so much nice memories of sitting for hours at
Yep.
the Assembly Chambers this summer.
And thanks to
Okay,
Cameron
thank
and others sitting in, so.
You have
Yeah,
such a great memory. I
Cameron
am
knows
so
what we're
impressed.
talking about.
I am very impressed with that presentation. Thank you very much, John.
Very short, thanks. So I guess the last thing then,
yeah,
to sort of
last
keep us
item.
on time, is the Fish Creek Trail connection. And I know a lot of people have been interested in the Fish Creek Trail, and we have been waiting to hold a land use committee meeting to see if there have been any updates. And there has been nothing on the public website. There's been no updates, no additional information. I have sort of two pieces of information. Some of the property owners on the southwest side of the trail, just sort of north of Northern Lights, asked some various people to come and look at some of the trail location issues. And that included representatives of the governor's office, that included representatives of the railroad, representatives of Marathon Oil, DOT commissioner, and pointed out some of their concerns with that particular route. And so as a result, a number of issues have been raised that are being considered by the railroad, by Marathon, by the municipality, by DOT. And those issues have not yet been resolved, but they could result in changes to the project in terms of how it might be configured. At the same time, talking to Noah King, who was the project manager for DOT, I asked him for an update since their website was lacking. And he said that they have finished 2 sets of field studies. One is cultural resources and one is wetlands delineation, and that they are in the process of completing their environmental review. And when I asked them what their environmental review consisted of, it's going to be what they call a categorical exclusion, which is sort of the least analytical of any of the environmental compliance analyses. And when that is done, it will be available to the public to look at, but it will not be available for the public to comment on. So I think there's a number of things in play, including some right-of-way issues at the north end of the project that might delay this or cause some changes in the project. And certainly, I think if they do put out a environmental review CADX that we feel is insufficient, we may wish to challenge it through the DOT appeal process. But I think we'll wait to see what happens, and that's just kind of the information I have at this time on Fish Creek.
Okay, well, that was a lot of info in a very brief period of time, and we know how big of a deal this project is. So thanks, John. So I would say stay tuned. You know, at minimum, we'll probably schedule a land use committee meeting to delve into more of this information when we get it. And I know their website had said they'll probably have a public meeting in September, but yeah, to be determined based on, sounds like since your discussion with Noah. Can you repeat what 2 studies they have completed? Because I didn't catch that.
So it was their cultural resources study and their wetlands delineation.
Okay. Okay. And is there any way for us to get copies of those?
I think once they're available, we can ask for them. It doesn't seem like they're ready to release anything yet from the way my conversation with Noah King went, but we should keep on him to be able to see those.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that was everything on the agenda. John, you did an excellent job on the last.
Talk fast.
So, unless there's anything else anybody wants to bring up very, very briefly, I think that we would entertain a motion to adjourn, and I appreciate going about 5 minutes over.
This is
So-
Pat, and I move we adjourn.
Okay.
Okay.
And who seconded it?
Dan.
Dan, of course, Dan would definitely second that. Okay, is there any opposition to
He beat
shut
me
this-
to it, that's why.
what'd you say, Sarah?
Oh, I said he beat me to it.
Okay, well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it. And, you know, clearly there's lots of things in the air, so we'd love to have all of your input and involvement as much as possible. So thank you very much, and you guys enjoy what little there is left at the end of this the end of this meeting. So thank you, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Dan.
you, guys. That was a great meeting. Good to
And
see
thank
you.
you again, Cameron, for joining us. And Dan, thanks for hosting.
Thanks, Cameron. Yeah,
thanks,
thank you,
Dan.
guys.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.
Recording is stopped.